Yo, hello. Series 2 ladder is going to be starting soon, and we will be having the Orlando Regional Championships on February 3rd this weekend as well, under the Series 2 format, and you can find all the information on the Pokemon website. But we're going to start here, and we're going to be talking about a bunch of different teams that have performed very well and have won very big tournaments early on. Just to give you an idea of some, the ways the format has changed a fair bit, and some, very tough Pokemon that have just strived to get to the top of the meta game, right? And first of all, we're going to be talking about a team Justin Burns used to actually win a Nino Pokebros tournament. These tournaments of 400 plus players, and it was a pretty cool archetype that we actually saw a little bit of in Series 1, though it was very different how the Series 1 version of this archetype worked, right? Instead of a Flutter Mane, you would have to have a Zoomerl, and the key difference there is Azumarill tends to play this more passive Sap Sipper bulky route, while Flutter Mane is a Pokemon with very good stats, but not the same kind of bulk. But it allows you to play in this more aggressive manner, and also it helps you eliminate some stuff that are a little annoying for Paris normally. Like if a Golden Go doesn't Terra, then your Flutter Mane can just Shadow Bullet, for example. And if you don't play for the Paris mode, all your mons are offensive enough on itself, where that the Paris mode is not as necessary as it was in Series 1 with that kind of team. And this allows you to clear up some slots for some more interesting options. Of course, there's the Psychic Heal Pulse on Gothitelle, and you have the Palafin, the Iron Hands, the Flutter, Arcanine that's kind of offensive of its own, all having Protect, and then the rotation from Iron Hands. It's been a very ridiculously strong Pokemon in this format that we'll be talking about a fair bit in general. And the Pokepaste we just have here as well in the sea that's taking advantage of the bulk, using pretty cool Terra typings. A lot of grass just so they can get around Spore and this Amoonguss in general, because Iron Hand's a notable quality of it. Even though this one is ultimately foregoing the electric type move, normally Iron Hands, all of its moves are this resisted by an opposing Amoonguss. So having that ability to just get around the Amoonguss is pretty important when a lot of your Pokemon just don't particularly dealing with it. And also stopping a Spore can be very helpful for setting up Paris endgames in general, as you're able to rotate in and rotate out a lot more safely, as you won't be losing as much. But in general, this is a very solid approach. And also the Palafin is a pretty cool addition as well. If we see the Volt Switch on Iron Hands, we see the 2 Fake Out users, and you also got an Arcanine with Flare Blitz and Snarl, they Intimidate. There's a lot of ways that you can create opportunity to rotate your Palafin in and then go out this very easily. And that's something that this team really does a great advantage to this take and use for Palafin. And there's other options as well in that slot. You could technically be an Iron Bundle, and honestly that was the version that I used, a similar kind of the version of this team but with Bundle instead. But Palafin's a very smart addition because you can just Fake Out, you can layer Fake Outs. You always have the rotation, and then when you become hero mode, you have mons like Amoonguss that can Paw and Puff you to full HP. You have the Heal Pulse on the Gothitelle to get you back to full as well. And you just have those ridiculously high statted Pokemon that can just take advantage of how an opponent plays at all times. There's so many different modes you can play, and you don't have to use Haze. There's a lot of Palafins that were running Haze as a Dondozo answer in early Series 1 when they were not attached to Rain, or sometimes even when they were attached to Rain. But because there's already Paris Song, which is in general one of the hardest ways to answer Dozo, you are more able to just run a rather bit flexible set, and you can actually run coverage, as we see close combat here. And that's something that's pretty cool in general. And you'll notice as well with the Iron Headset, as I said earlier, they do not have the electric stab. And this is really the other thing I want to talk about, is if you just look at this team in general, there's not many great ways to deal with opposing Flutter other than your own Flutter. There's not many great ways to deal with Sylveon other than this snarling it down and saying Paris Trap, or just hitting it with a big Palafin hit. So having a Heavy Slam on Iron Hands allows you that big burst option to just take care of a Sylveon. You can terrestrialize it to grass, so you don't have to take the Hyper Voice super effectively as well. And that's a pretty cool way this to go about it. And it also has another important move to talk about is why you Volt Switch over Thunder Punch or a Wild Charge, right? But because this is ultimately still a Perish Trap team, the ability to have Volt Switch to rotate out your Amoonguss, to rotate out your Gothitelle, set it back in, get your trap up, and like if you set like Perish Song turn 1, you can Volt Switch Perish Song, and then you can get your Goth in, conserve your trap, and always make sure that you have the trap up so you can actually get the pressure in. You can also use Volt Switch to get your Palafin back in hero mode. You can do a lot of stuff with that, like that, making it in some ways more valuable to your team to have the Volt Switch than the actual like Wild Charge tab. And the other thing worth talking about is Gothitelle actually choosing to run an attack move. It exists, but normally Gothitelles in like Series 1, for example, they would run like Hypnosis, they would run Helping Hand, they would run all these other moves. They would forego Stab Psychic. But the reason Stab Psychic is actually like chosen here is because of like this kind of rise in Pokemon Terra typing to Poison. So having that ability to quick psychic into them, like a Garganacl tears the poison, you can still just quick psychic into it. There's Iron Hands that is just naturally a fighting electric type, so you can quick psychic into that, force it to Terra, or just do like solid damage every turn. There's this in general a lot of scenarios like that that make psychic at least a little valuable for you. And also mons like Amoonguss you can hit super effectively too. Overall, a very cool team from Justin, and I think it's one of the premier teams and concepts that we'll see this work out early on and should potentially have some like decent level play at Orlando, I would expect. And the next team I think is worth talking about is the team that a friend of mine used, Ally, who actually did a whole team report. Well, I'll link the whole team report in the description if you want to read through all their thoughts. I'm just going to go, since they already have their team report out, I don't really need to say too much about it. But in general, this a very solid bulk core with like Grim, Arcanine, Iron Hands, Gastro, Sylveon, and Corb. Which, if you played the past format in Sword and Shield, even though Dynamax doesn't exist, so it's a bit different, but like the early Sword and Shield formats where people could run like Grim, Corby, and Arcanine bulk, this is very much that style, where you have all these bulky Pokemon together, and if they're this bulky as hell and you can't get rid of them, and they just slowly just end your career, and that's the general idea here. It's also important to note one item in particular, and that's the Covert Cloak on the Gastrodon. Covert Cloak notably stops like any additional effects of moves, and the reason that's there is once again because of the existence of Garganacl. If you don't know, from one of the early regionals we had in Series 1 with Meluka, they actually won with a Terra Poison Garganacl. And that's a concept that has like kind of stayed true in the Series 2 metagame, where there's still a lot of Garganacl players and there's a lot of like very bulky stuff around that. So having this Gastrodon, this has Convert Cloak, Garganacl can never ever beat it, as it'll just quick Earth Power every time, and even if it's like a different Terra, like Terra Ghost or whatever, you still have the advantage because you recover and you out damage them. You have the chance of getting a Spadef drop too. Garga can never really beat this Gastrodon set in a 1v1 if it comes down to it, which is pretty important as Garganacl teams tend to want to like position themselves into a way that Garganacl can actually stall to an endgame with like this Salt Cure, and this Protect, Salt Cure, Recover, and this kind of slow down the tempo to a halt. But with a mono like Gastrodon that always wins it in that endgame, it's not as possible anymore. So that's the general idea behind that set here. You also see this kind of standard Sylveon set, and opting for like Yawn instead of like Calm Mind or Quick Attack. Yawn's a move that can like slow down tempo a bit as well. As like, you know, opponent this gets yawned, you're much more inclined to switch, or you're just taking sleep. And taking sleep is like so bad in general that Yawn basically just forces a switch 99% of the time. So it's just a very reliable option to this force out switches and this like allow the tempo to be like a bit faster. Because like I'm on like Sylveon with Throat Spray and the Hyper Voice. If you force a switch, right? If something tried to switch in on the Sylveon Hyper Voice just to get yawned, and it's forced to switch because of the yawn, the Hyper Voice damage is going to start to like go up and this have a lot more immediate pressure. And there's another interesting thing. The Grimmsnarl is Misty Terrain, which is just for opposing Amoonguss, because like Amoonguss is just very popular this format. And I think this is the realization that there isn't much that I want to Thunder Wave, and there isn't much that I really want to take speed over, so choosing Misty Terrain as the move of choice instead. This to prevent status, prevent Will-O-Wisp on Iron Hands, prevent Will-O-Wisp on Corp if it Terra Dragons. Like there's a lot of little scenarios like that that allow this team to like function in a decent way. Overall, cool team by Ally. You can read the report for more details on it and just like general ideas of what the calcs do and some of the ideas behind what they've like said here. I read through it a bit on my own, but it's better that you just read it so you get a general idea of the team. And yeah, the final team I want to talk about is Kosta's team. This one's a pretty cool one as it actually went undefeated and like didn't drop a game in the tournament that it played in, which is a tournament that just goes on every Wednesday. Had a very sizable amount of entrants as well. And this team has like kind of the same kind of concept as why I talked about Garganackle, how popular Garganackle was Series 1 and how that like kind of stays true in Series 2. And a lot of players are still like trying to use Garganackle at a high level. And this is the same kind of concept, but actually putting him on like Sandy Shocks in. And Sandy Shocks is a new electric ground type Pokemon. And that gives you a lot of like valuable stab. I know a lot of people may not have looked at Sandy Shocks as like the craziest Pokemon ever. It's a very like simple Pokemon in a lot of senses, right? But Sandy Shocks gives you two very valuable typings that are normally like separate, right? Electric Ground are two typings that are like consistently used in VGC because they're just having the ability to hit a bulky water type in general is always going to be viable, as like we see with like Iron Bundle, for example, which Bundle does of course hit it back super effectively because of the ground type, but this helps you just take it out with a Thunderbolt. And any like bulky Pokemon that tries to go into Terra Water isn't particularly going to like hitting the Thunderbolt either. Like an Annihilate can either go like fire, it can go water, it can go steel. No matter what Terra the Annihilate chooses to go, right? The Sandy Shocks will always be able to hit it with Thunderbolt and Earth Power, because the most common defensive Terra typings in this metagame are water, steel, and like the only one Sandy Shocks doesn't really hit, water, steel, poison, and then like the only one Sandy Shocks fails to hit is like grass. But in general, like those are the main Terra typings you see, and like defensively and offensively, it's just usually good to have a ground type because of how like powerful an electric type can be offensively. And when you put that together with having like Earth Power on your own, which is another like excellent offensive typing in its own right. Ground is generally pretty useful, as fire is very common and water is very common too. So like having the ability to cover that in an interesting way is like what makes Sandy Shocks like very appealing. And not to mention there's like some other interesting things you can do with Sandy Shocks thanks to an item called Booster Energy, where it activates photosynthesis. In this case with Kosta's team, we see like Terra Blast, right? So you can go Terra Blast 2 to Terra into a grass type. And that's a set that makes it like pretty interesting in how it plays. As you will see this, you have it to 50, you can go Timid. And Booster Energy boosts the highest stat, so you can just go this. 168, you go 167. Booster Energy prioritizes the number that's ahead here, right? So if you were 168, it would boost special attack, so you have to go 167. But yeah, you can go like this, and now you have a speed boost. And why the speed boost can be important is now you outspeed Iron Bundle, and you can just Thunderbolt it. And any like Pokemon in general is just not going to like taking a Thunderbolt Earth Power from this Pokemon. So this is in general very useful Pokemon to have around. And it's cool to see it just get like a big result early on. And in general, there's some kind of more standard sets. We see like Volcarona with the bulky Rage Powder Struggle Bug, Tailwind set, the kind of standard Mimikyu that's developed a bit in Series 1, where it's just like multiple stab attacks. You have Shadow Sneak as well to eliminate Flutter Mains. And Break Focus Sash is where they are. Yeah, the Meowscarada is a very Series 1 kind of team, but taken to Series 2, and it did really well doing that with the use of Sandy Shocks, making it a very interesting team, and something that should be expected to see like have some like early performances, considering that ultimately it did win a very big tournament. And like this, the offensive prowess of these Pokemon are very cool in their own rights. You see the low dice with the Icicle Spear, the Water Terra, you know, the multiple Water Terras here as well, just to reconfirm what I talked about earlier, where Water Terra, pretty good, pretty good. And you just see the Grass Terras as well to get around Amoonguss. Poison on the Garganacl, as we talked about. And yeah, that's really it with this video. I hope this like helped you guys find some like cool teams to just use at the start of the Series 2 ladder, which will be beginning tomorrow. And maybe if you are going to Orlando, you could get some good ideas off of it. We'll be doing some more videos on like some team concepts, some like Paradox Pokemon. We're going to be doing a lot of like work before Orlando and during Orlando. I do plan on actually streaming all of Orlando regionals and like having as much of a broadcast as we can for that. And there's also like some teams of my own that we will be going over soonish. But there's this team as well, which I made like, I have it for YouTube community members what the PokePaste is on this, and if you sub to us on Twitch, it's also there. Or I also made a Patreon, so there's like 3 different ways that you can support the channel and also get like teams and get stuff that I use a bit earlier than I like normally would release them. But that's up to you guys. That's up to you guys in general. Thank you guys for watching. Later.